Should be topic number 8. How can one be an atheist and proclaim to have a general African perspective when quote unquote God for Africans is different than Europe? Couldn't this be the case that African culture to an atheist would be seen as barbaric? Right? This came with a link. Link is going to take us to YouTube. Oh crap. I guess I didn't do the thing I was supposed to do. Hold on a second. All right. Yeah, this is the one that has the 2-part video. Okay. So let me do this again. And I'm supposed to play a certain timestamp. Do I have it? Sorry, just give me a second. Messing up. Okay, so the timestamp is 4:35, 43:35. Let me share my screen so you guys could see what's going on. And then I got to go to 43:35.
So now we're going to go. So that was the Daguerre. Now we're going to go to Mali. That was a Daguerre in Burkina Faso, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Ghana. So now we're going to go over a little bit further west into Mali. So in the text of Pale Fox, when talking about the god Amma, and the god Amma is cognate with the word Amen in ancient Egyptian. And again, you can visit Aluja Volume 2 for evidence of that. So, and some other works. I think Dr. Theophilo Benga in his African philosophy book also, makes this correlation, and others. Modupe Oduyoye and others have made this linguistic correlation. And so Amma, aka Amen, Griole and Dercheline inform us that in contrast to our own society, which is almost wholly profane. So you notice when these Europeans who have a good grasp of these African concepts start discussing and comparing it with their own concepts, they have to make this distinction. Saying here that, like, they're not like us. We conceive of things differently. So he's saying here, in contrast to our own society, which is almost wholly profane, the sacred being allotted a circumscribed and limited function. That's why you go to church on Sunday and, you have just limited time to do sacred things. For the Dogon, however, there is no schism between the sacred and the profane, as the universe is God Amma's creation, indeed is Amma. It is sacred with all that it contains, from the infinitesimal to the infinite. Do y'all get what we're saying here? As the universe is God Amma's creation, indeed is Amma. So this is hard for a lot of folks to grasp, who have only had this conversation in relationship to Judeo-Christian religion. Because in Judeo-Christian religion and in Islam, God is an entity separate from creation. That is not the case generally in Africa. The universe, the cosmos, nature, God are one and the same. There is no difference. It's not like saying that God is in everything and he has a little bit of essence here and a little bit of essence. No. Everything is God. God is existence itself. And so hopefully y'all starting to get why it is impossible for you to be an atheist from a general African perspective. So, we're going to continue here. So we're going to flip and go all the way to Northeast Africa into ancient Kemet. And so a lot of you should be familiar with this text, Ma'at, the Moral Ideal in Ancient Egypt by Dr. Maulana Karenga. This is basically his second PhD dissertation in book form. And shout out to Donnie Williams for your generous gift and donation to the channel. I appreciate it greatly. And we will continue. So we're going to talk about Ma'at. And so the way that a lot of people view the so-called deities in ancient Egypt and in Africa general, they want to make it seem like these are just independent deities unto themselves. That is not the case. It is God, the Nun, in the form of either Keper or Ma'at, Ra, Osiris, Amen, They're all the same deity. The different names reflect the particular function that they're trying to highlight of the cosmos, which is God itself. And so, as discussed in Maulana Karenga's work, he says, indeed, Ma'at is not only the shared essence of God, humans, and nature, in other words, existence itself, but a binding agent also. And this is because there's a word mat meaning to tie. And in its nominalized form, there's a word mat meaning rope. For the ancient Egyptian, mat is the order of creation. And so remember Nangmin among the Dagara, God, the order of reason. That's their variant or one of their titles for Ma'at in among the Dagara. So for the ancient Egyptian, Ma'at as the order of creation bounds all things together in an indestructible unity. Therefore, the universe, the natural world, the state, and the individual were all seen as parts of a wider order generated by Ma'at. It was, as argued above, the organizing quality of phenomena that ran through and united all things. As stated above, Ma'at was the essence of existence, which was not only the essence of the creator and humans, but also of the natural world. And so again, the study of these deities show you the aspect of the totality of God that they're highlighting. So when they're talking about Ma'at as a cosmic order, they're talking about the principle, the aspect of God that is responsible for organizing the phenomena that we see. And so in many respects, you would argue that Ma'at in many contexts represents, for example, the laws of nature. Now, one can debate all the laws of nature, physical and all this other kind of stuff. That's a constant conversation in physics, in astrophysics. And so now we're going to deal with the god Khepri, for example. And everybody thinks this is a separate god. This is separate from Ma'at. This is separate from Ra. This is separate from Osiris. No, we're going to find out. So a lot of you may be familiar with this text because we like to highlight this text a lot. And so I think this is one of Brother Sanjetti's favorite texts. And this is the Book of Knowing Ra's Ways of Being. It's from the Papyrus Bremner Rhine from the 4th century BCE. And it gives a very detailed and modern scientific explanation of existence itself. And so there's going to be some parts of this conversation that's going to seem contradictory, but it's going to all come together at the end. So it's going to be cited in 2 slides. So let's start with it. So in the Bremner Rhine papyrus, it is the god Ra having a conversation and informing mankind of who he is and what his nature is, right? So he's saying, it starts off, the book of knowing Ra's ways of being and of thus overcoming the serpent Apep. Thus spoke the Lord of the universe. He said, I came into being as the existent, the one who exists, first to come into being. Having come into being as what exists, I then was. That was how existence came into being. For I was before the ancient gods, my creation. Before they were, I was. My name preceded theirs, for I created antiquity and the ancient gods. I created time. I made all that I desired in this world, and I spread over it. I reached out my hand by myself before they were born, before I spat out Shu, which would be Sa in amongst the Daggara, and Tefnut. I used my own mouth, and magic was my name. The word is Heka in the ancient Egyptian language. It was I who came into being, and in my manner of being, taking on existence as what exists. Thus, I came into existence in the primal time. After that beginning, a host of ways of being came into existence. For before then, there was no mode of existence whatsoever in this world. That's why I say you got to pay attention to the wording, because he's talking about in this world, the earth. Not saying that existence, God is a type of existence, but he came to a point where he wanted a different type of existence to exist. And he's going to say that below. All that I did accomplish, all that I did, I accomplished alone before any other being came into existence to create alongside me in these places. There I created the modes of being with the energy in me. There I created in Nun, while still drowsy, while I had yet to find any ground on which to stand upright. But then my heart was filled with energy. The design of creation appeared before me, and I accomplished everything I wanted to do. Being alone, conceiving the designs in my heart, I created a different mode of existence, and multitudinous ways of being were born of the existence. So I hope y'all are paying attention to the words that I have highlighted in these slides. The existence, what exists, taking on existence. After that, being a host of ways of coming into being into existence. I created a different mode of existence, and a multitudinous ways of being were born of the existence. So he started off the conversation calling himself the existence. So he is existence. And so he differentiated himself and created other deities that were responsible for creating other manners of existence. So this is how you challenge any of the so-called Black atheists. You can't argue that you are anti-existence, that you don't believe in existence. You can't exist and have the whole body and ability to think while existence and saying that you don't believe in existence. You don't believe in what exists. It is illogical. Because again, African concept of God is not the same as Judeo-Christian. We not on the same page here. You can only be an atheist in a European context in a Judeo-Christian Abrahamic context. It is virtually impossible. I'll just say it is impossible. From a Daguerre, from an ancient Egyptian, from a Dogon perspective, and we're gonna extend this because I want y'all to see that this isn't just random. I'm not cherry picking concepts here. I'm showing a commonality and continuity in thought across Africa. Excuse me. As I take a sip of some homemade tea that I made.
All right, so that's the video that was attached. There's also a part 2 that's from Twitter. I'll just read it now. It says it's from Ancient Kemet. At Ancient Kemet, he said the famous symbol of a guy. Now I'm gonna mess it up. But I've never heard these words actually pronounced. But I guess guy.
Niame.
Meaning Niame. Okay, thank you for that. Meaning only the Supreme Being is a reference to the fact that Niame, the Akan Ghanaian Supreme Being, is the only thing in existence. It goes on to say, Ra Un Nefer, Amen, teaches that when Africans say we believe in a Supreme Being, we are not referring to a being that is above other beings. We are referring to the fact that it is the only being in existence. All beings exist within this one being. He says this one being is the universe. This is the meaning of Guy Niame. And the reason on its shape like a cyclic pattern, much like the galaxy. It does not mean only God in the sense of fair only God. Nowhere in the Akan phrase Guy Niame is the word fair. That is a new meaning that the Christians gave it to align with the biblical obsession with fearing God. This Akan concept, this African concept of the Supreme Being is not limited to the Akan of Ghana, but found in every African culture. This is why most African names for the Supreme Being mean, quote unquote, the universe's Lord, and not Lord of the universe as Europeans try to mistranslate. For example, the name, I'm definitely going to mess this up, Nebuchadnezzar was a name for the Supreme Being in Kemet, meaning the all universe is Lord. The Yoruba also have the same exact meaning of Olodumare. Both are mistranslated as Lord of all, when in fact they mean the all is Lord. This is a reminder that nothing is above the all, that everything we do should be in consideration of the all, not just ourselves, but of the effect our behavior has on the whole universe. Because Europeans have no concept of the all is Lord, their behavior shows a lack of perspective about how they affect all the earth, which is why their short-sighted culture naturally produces resource depletion and chronic pollution. Lastly, he says, prosperity is assured if in our every action we remember the symbol of Gi Niame, which basically is the all is Lord, I guess. That's interesting. That's why I actually vibe with that. As a person who's agnostic but spiritual, I vibe with that right there. With that said, let's have from Real Black Gentleman. Real Black Gentleman, what say you? How can one be an atheist and proclaim to have a general African perspective when quote unquote God for Africans is different than Europe? What say you?
Well, I'm not really an atheist per se. Like, I understand, creation in that, even in like conceptive terms of, you have a sperm and you have an egg, and there's seemingly nothing, and then there's a point in which nothing becomes of something, and then what is that of the separation of you know what I'm saying? There's this creation, you know what I'm saying? It's like I understand, like, how can one be atheist? Like, it's just, I mean, it's like, you have to understand, like, I am because we are, you know what I'm saying? It's like these sayings of African peoples, that's in our bones, that should be in your bones. And you know what I'm saying, that is just, second nature. It's like there is, there is something higher than us, that there's a source that, that is beyond, below, and above us. You know what I'm saying? It's like, in the thing about that, and the thing about Africa, and the thing about, I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, atheism is nonsense. It's psychobabble to kind of confuse you, and to captivate you into another set of ideas that, you're thinking about something when you should not really necessarily be thinking, and more use your intuition. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I feel. I think about it, and it's like, I think it's silly. I think, you know what I'm saying, you have to, like, rest. When people talk about praying, it's just you're resting your body, you're resting your mind, and you're just like trying to, harmonize the frequency of your body with the frequencies around you, the earth itself, the sun, the moon, the animals, you know what I'm saying, the wind, the water, you know what I'm saying, just harmonizing, and just, becoming as one as you can with the all around you. I mean, that's why, you know what I'm saying? I mean, to me, like, it's things, you know what I'm saying, little aspects about prayer and stuff. I always think about differently to other people, but, like, yeah, I think that anyone who's talking that stuff about, like, atheism, I mean, I know that, we're gonna have to talk about Jesus, and, you don't talk about Jesus, and you just be an atheist, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know what I'm saying, you have to do a little bit more theology work. You gotta do your God logic, you know what I'm saying? You gotta do your God logic about it, you know what I'm saying? And when we speak of, you know what I'm saying, the incarnations of earth, and, you know what I'm saying, and you know what I'm saying, in heaven, you know what I'm saying, in Newt, and Asar, and Geb, you know what I'm saying, I get that, you know what I'm saying, those aren't real people. It's not like they're not chimeras, they're just like interpretations of manifestations. Like, you just have to find that hawk in you, you know what I'm saying, you find that that aspect, you see nature, and, if I can eat a little piece of something, it becomes a part of me, you know what I'm saying. It's like you see the world, and what is outside of you is in you. It's to me, it's not complicated. I'm a pass. I want to listen to someone else.
Thank you for that, real black gentleman. Ua Bantum is here in the chat. He says, I saw Imhotep is on. Okay, that's nice. All right, thanks for coming through. And anyone else who was here, I don't know if I saw KW Dawn 7 tonight, or Bobby Wright, but you guys are out there. Peace to y'all. Right? Let's go to Jay. Joe, what say you to this?
Yeah, like I said in the chat, atheism is one of the most ignorant religions. Yeah, they have a lot of common religious people. They know better. Their zero God is the most potential. Omnipotent, but yeah, it's their zero God is a stack of theories, and what I believe what I interpret from Genesis is that it is speaking what this brother was just teaching, right? So yeah, again, I believe I gave this example more than once before, but I'm going to give it again. So this Jesus figure, he explained the old books to those to his friends, right? His drinking and partying friends, that's for sure. But and one of his friends interpreted it as in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and etc. etc. A long alinea. I don't know if that's also in English called an alinea, but a whole alinea dedicated to the Word was God, and God was what the Word, and the Word was with God, and etc. And I rewind. So that's his interpretation of Jesus, explaining Jesus, Yeshua, whatever, the dude. What he explained, it was the interpretation what he explained about Genesis, right, in the beginning. So what does Genesis says about the beginning? In the beginning, God said, "Let there be light," and He saw that it was good. So I'm gonna take both of those interpretations of an allegory, because if it's an allegory, it's probably hard to touch with words. So people use allegories, right? So what do? I take these two allegories and add them to try to understand what is being said. And I take it like, okay, the word is the closest to your consciousness, right? And the moment that you realize that naming things is good, right? Your consciousness, saw that it was good that you named things, because your consciousness can work with that. Your consciousness can work with names, right? So he saw that it was good. So yeah, okay, that closes the circle. John 1:1 is John's interpretation of the explanation of that other dude's explanation of Genesis. I believe I have a huge aha moment. Only that sentence is so beautiful of an allegory. Let that, listen to the difference, let that be light. And I saw that it was good to name things. So I'm going to name that wood. I'm going to name that red. I'm going to name that warm. I'm going to name that far. I'm going to name that deep. You understand where I'm getting to? So how real, what is realer than real than to realize the word is the closest thing to your consciousness, and that the word is from God. Consciousness. Okay, you need your voice string, or whatever it's called in English, and you need your breath. You need to be alive to make a sound, and to construct cues of sound. And yeah, later on we called it word, and we saw that it was good to call it word, because we could communicate about our communication, and so on and so on and so on, till this day we are inventing worlds. The only thing that you can be sure of is when we travel farther than all these lenses and satellites can see. If we travel farther and we encounter a thing that we don't know, you can count on it that we will give it a name, and it will start to live in our collective consciousness, if we communicated with each other, of course. Yeah, I think I'm on to something with Genesis, and it's one-on-one connected with Kemet, I believe. But hey, I'm no PhD, and I'm no scholar. I just used my consciousness, and I yield the mic.
Thank you for that, Jose. Let's hear from Buana next. Buana, what's it? Is Buana not there?
Oh, sorry. There are several things for me in this particular in this brother's particular dialogue that I find to be extremely problematic. Extremely problematic because, see, first let me say this: when you are having a discussion in terms of what's right and what's wrong, there needs to be some objectivity in your dialogue. Okay, so the mind refers to the spiritual systems of ancient Africa and what the ancient Africans was practicing. That is fine, but just because ancient Africans practice something that we are not there, We are not in ancient Africa. And notice we say ancient Kemetic system. It's the reason why it's ancient, by the way. What do contemporary Africans think in terms of religion and God, or not being God, in terms of having an African perspective? That commentary is not there. You know, we had a dialogue in terms of Hubert Harrison. Hubert Harrison was a noted atheist, and he wrote many different articles on black atheism in terms of his perspective as being a African person living in the West. Where is that commentary? So we could balance out what's being said by the spiritualists and what's being said by stated by the atheists. Because the only takeaway I get from this is a one-sided perspective. It's not objective. It's not balanced. You know, because if I'm only hearing a one-sided dialogue, I consider that to be extremely problematic. That's first. Second, when you talk about ancient, in terms of what ancient Africans practice, there must be some contemporary information as well. Because I live in a contemporary age. I don't live in an ancient African society. I live in a contemporary society. So obviously the information what they had back then has improved, and some of the perspective may have moved. Some of the perspectives and ideas may have moved. So would a new black men in the Western world, because I don't consider myself to be an African man, and even continental Africans, how are they looking at this particular perspective and saying, oh, are we going to deny black men who have an African perspective because they are unbelievers? They don't believe. See, if I have a discussion with Professor Lumumba, Professor Lumumba is a known atheist. He's a stated he's an atheist, yet he is a Pan-African. So I should have a dialogue with him to find out what his position is on these particular matters. Because I'm only hearing for Asa Imhotep. That's a one-sided discussion. What does he say as an atheist? You know, so this is the reason why for me it's problematic. Then in Assad's Imhotep dialogue, he says that one thing is different from the next. But yet when you hear him discussing ancient African society, you hear the Judeo-Christianity, and you hear where it comes from, because many of the Judeo-Christian concepts come from ancient Africa. Where do you think that the Europeans got a lot of their spirituality and ideas of God and things from? They got it from the Africans. So how is there a disconnect? When you just change the name of the deities and call it something else, but in reality, you practicing the same kind of spirituality. How is that a disconnect? When the mind says that God created lesser gods, are you talking about Catholicism? How is that different? How is that the disconnect? Because in Catholicism, you have the supreme God, then you have the smaller deities called saints. In terms of when he was discussing the Dogon people and God is bringing into existence, all these things that these brothers them are mentioning, you have vestiges of where a lot of black people on the Western world, or even throughout the whole length and breadth of the world, the Europeans have taken ideas and concepts and integrated them in their religions. How is it so different? You know, of course there is a nexus. John Henry, and I can finally end on this. John Henry Clark said, if you're looking for God, you look in the mirror. That's what he said. Go look in the mirror. You know what I mean? Now, me, I don't consider myself an atheist, even though I always been labeled as one. I consider myself to be an agnostic person. I do not know what happens. I don't know. I can't see beyond my limited scope as a human being. You know what I mean? Maybe some other people have the capacity to do that. I don't have the capacity to do that. You know what I mean? But when I look in the mirror, I do see God. You know what I mean? My only issue with the religionists, you know what I mean, the African spiritual policeman, is that I like to be responsible for my actions and not place it in the hands of the unseen. Therefore, I take the power back to me, to self, not placing in these third and fourth and fifth parties. This is the problem that I have with the spiritual police. You know what I mean? Because I believe that I'm responsible, and I also believe that I'm capable as well. You know what I mean? I have agency. Not third unseen parties. This is my issue. This is my issue. You know what I mean? But like I say, I'll leave it there to let the brothers them dialogue about it. All I'm saying is there need to be some objectivity in this discussion because I need to hear what the atheist perspective is in terms of the African's perspective. If there is none there, then it is a lopsided discussion. I'll leave it there.
I will just point out what Trigger Happy points out here, which is what I heard as well. He says what John Henrik Clark is saying is mutual to African spiritual practices. African people always emphasize that we are all God. I don't know if we listened to the same presentation. Yeah, I mean, that's what it was getting across. Like you said, you see God in the mirror. The idea was that we're all a part of this thing that would be called, as a placeholder, as someone said in the chat earlier, quote unquote God. We're all a part of this thing, you know. Let's hear from Carl.
This is a very interesting topic. But to Buana's point, uh, we live in a world where like 98% of the African continent worships either Christianity or Islam. So I think within that context, I mean, these African spiritual systems, these aren't world religions. When someone says they're atheists, they're really against the world religions that dominate the world right now, which is Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and the like. So this is an interesting topic, but I don't think that if you are atheists, you can't be. You're going against Africa because Africa is not dominated by African spiritual systems, African religions. Africa is dominated by Christianity and Islam, with a few, sprinklings of voodoo or Ifa here and there. So, to me, I guess I'm not atheist because I don't know. There's some questions I think that can be answered through just observation and whatnot. But the burden of proof is on the person making the claim. So if someone says I'm an atheist or I don't believe in this, and someone insists, okay, yeah, this is real, well, prove it. And to me, no one has ever been able to objectively prove the existence of deities and whatnot. So at least that's how I'm looking at it, right? From my perspective. So atheists, as far as being against African, to me, I don't feel like though that's accurate because we've had some African scholars who are atheists. You mentioned John Henry Clark, Carlos Cooks. I mean, to me, I don't really see the big deal about it. Like, why do you need to go back to the ancient beliefs? We're talking about ancient Egypt. It's a dead. I mean, it's a dead religion. There's nobody worshiping these guys really. Not on a serious tip. I mean, it's not a world religion anymore. So I mean, it's interesting to look at, and I guess I enjoy reading about mythology. I always have when I was a kid, but I just want to leave it in the realm of mythology personally. But I mean, interesting concept. So I'm gonna leave it alone. I'll pass the mic. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I think we didn't get to Tanzania. Tan, you've heard everything everyone else had to say. What say you to this?
Okay, so I'll try to keep it short. I would say that in terms of African understanding of, the metaphysical, we were neither religious nor atheistic. There's no religion that is properly African. Yeah, there's some, similarities and so on and so forth, but there's no one African religion. We have basically just copied from everyone else. So we don't have a religion as such. And also, we don't really have atheism as such, the denial, both the religion and the denial of religion that's something that I don't think is characteristic of us as Africans. So in terms of taking one over the other, I actually have, a certain respect for Black atheists, because to me, an atheistic person at least has spent some time, thinking about what they believe in. Somebody who is religious and simply believes is usually, familial or generational, or just they believe just because. And also this fear of atheism also leads people to jump from one crazy religion to another, because they do not want to be left, stranded. How I look at it, atheism is not African, but it's a phase. It is a phase that everybody should go through at some point or another, just like every believer should go through doubt. I think everyone should go through an atheistic phase where you simply say, well, if there is nothing, then what can I create? What how do things work if there's no belief outside of religion and so on and so forth? So it's a chance to recreate things. It's not an end in itself. It's a way to take things, take stock of things, just like and with atheism, in time, you get to a point where you realize how dogmatic you're being, just like the religionist who says, this and there's no way other, this is the only way, and everybody who believes differently should, have their heads separated. So you come to a position where you soften and you become more agnostic about it. And some people get elevated where they come to a deeper religious spiritual existence. So there are levels to it. I think that at least one thing with atheism is that you're allowed to question your beliefs. You're allowed to turn those doubts into a sort of critical look at your beliefs, and then decide where you want to go from there. If you're stuck there, that's as bad as being stuck in one religion and another, just going through those constant circles. But, to each their own. Everyone has their own, journey and so on. So for me, I think that it's one way to look at things. It's like anarchy in political, discourse. Everyone goes through their anarchic period where you want to throw everything to the garbage and so on, or just start all over again, question everything as it is, and build from the beginning. So I look at atheism and anarchy, in a similar manner. Okay, that's it.
I appreciate that. I think I got everyone on that one, right?
Nah.
Oh, I didn't get. Homie, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna read some of my book, right? Why not? So part of what I wanted to do was capture some of the wisdom of our ancestors, So there's this one rare, like not too many people heard this interview that Yosef Ben Yakinen does, right? And at some point, he clarifies spirituality pretty clearly. Okay, so he says it this way. He says, "Look," and this is me quoting him, right? Remember, people didn't always worship as we do now. They worshiped their ancestors, and you gave them more honor when they passed, but you honor them as they were living as well. So you didn't need to pass to be worshipped, but when you passed, you carried your power with you. Many of our ancestors were worshipped in their lifetimes. Asar was one of them. He was the governor of Aneb Hedge, which is today called Cairo. He was a real person. He acted in justice and became a Netcher. Aset, his wife, and Netcher, I think he might have said God, right? But, I wrote Netcher, right? Aset, his wife and sister, the same. And of course, I clarified this in the pretext to say that they weren't really sisters, but, in Africa, if somebody's like the same age as you, you'd call them your sister, right? So anyways, Aset, his wife and sister, the same. The Netcheru, or the gods, were modeled after real people. Set and his wife, Nephthys, were also brothers and sisters. So all of the four of them were siblings. Now, again, they weren't all siblings, but so I just clarified that in the pretext, but I gave what, and of course, I think he said gods, but, I wrote down Netcher because I don't like the word, right? But anyway, so he says, throughout Africa, the ancestors became whom the people would worship. It's natural. You're going to love your grandmother and grandfather. Ancient Kemet was no different from the rest of Africa. I wasn't so different from the rest of Africa, but there and Kenetu did have, them and Kush did have first writing. Everything before writing and belief, writing makes facts. You can record it, so on and so forth. So he just goes on and so on and so forth. But why I'm quoting this, right, is to say that that's the origin of spiritual systems. That's the origin of spirituality. Now, on the other hand, when people say, and this is why it's really critical for us to, when we encounter this sort of information about African spirituality and this and so on and so forth, one, we have to understand the terms that we're using, and two, we have to understand the context that we're engaging with it. You know, the idea that God is everything or something like that, right? That's a westernization of an African concept. You know, the God concept was the Western concept. Okay, not to say that we don't have supreme beings and all that kind of stuff, sure, but the God concept, as in so much as atheism would be the rejection of that said God, which is more or less the rejection of the Abrahamic God, and the Abrahamic God as this, you know, as what the Abrahamic God is, right? That is what atheism is, and it's kind of like what Carl just said about, because I'm using the word and people say it's a broken record, sure, but it's about the real world. You know, you go to Africa, like random people wrote me today, Eid Mubarak. You know what I mean? Even the president of Tanzania said Eid Mubarak, as in today was, I think, the last day, or yesterday was the last day of Islamic holiday. And everybody in Tanzania was celebrating it, the Christians and the Muslims, right? We have to deal with, obviously, as far as, you know, what African culture really was, it really was this ancestral worship. That's what it was. It really was esteeming your elders and your amazing people. Like when we sit around and talk about how Garvey is this and Garvey is that, that's the African culture. That's the same as when Aset was doing all this big stuff, we were like, yo, or when Asar was doing all these big stuff, we were like, yo, this governor is the governor. He's the ideal. A lot of what African spirituality was a bunch of idealism and a bunch of science. So saying something like God is in everything, or consciousness in everything, or love, you know, whatever, that kind of stuff is just a scientific observation according to what people would have believed at the time and how they articulated. You know, the thing that the thing that you should pick up on really quickly when you study ancient Kemet is the persona, like the humanization of ideas. You know, the humanization of ideas. So as to say that if you were to ask an ancient Kemetu, right, where did you learn how to write? Right, it'd be the same person who taught them math. It'd be the same person who taught them building structures, and it's not a person at all. It is Tahuti. Okay, so Tahuti is now, or some people call it thought. Right, is this, you know, just this, you know, oh yeah, just knowledge or whatever. But then they personify it to put this into stories to make it more palatable, kind of for children, right? And also to esteem whatever ancestor. Not necessarily a real person who accomplished all these things, but whatever ancestor might have been remarkable in the past, and you say, you know what, we're going to respect Tahuti, we're going to respect Imhotep, we're going to respect Asar, we're going to respect Aset. You know, so you have to understand that. Now, when you go into, oh well, this is just us practicing the godship, it's like it goes back to that, you know, that kind of black insecurity that a lot of people have, where if the white man has it, we have to have it as well. And here's proof that we did it. And it also goes into misunderstanding why a person who is colonized by Westerners will reject the Westerners' religion. You understand? And in that rejection of the Western religion, that is what would be called the atheism, right? But instead of seeing it as, oh yeah, this person is rejecting this imposition that is broad and is dominating in their continent, they want to pick at you and say, well, that's not even African, because we did not have Jesus. We did not have, because Jesus is purported as a god. right? We did not have Moses. We did not have Muhammad. We didn't have these figures. And so when somebody rejects these things, it is not that. And I want to say, just on top of that too, if a Greek person today said, you know, oh man, I mean, I tell you, if Zeus was to do so and so forth, and another Greek person said, hey, shut the fuck up about like what are you talking about Zeus for? You know, that's not like Zeus is not, or Apollo is not carrying the sun, or I guess that's Rome or whatever, but Apollo is not carrying the sun all the time, right? If you say that, and then another person says, well, you ain't a real African because you don't, you ain't a real Roman because you don't believe that Apollo. It's like, no, let's understand that at one point, people once upon a time tried to explain things simplified for other people. You know, they tried to explain science, and now that you don't need to personify scientific phenomena, right? You just don't need to personify scientific phenomena anymore, right? Obviously, we're still going to respect our ancestors. We do it now when we talk about Garvey and them, right? Or when I mentioned the area and so on and so forth, right? But you know, like this whole notion of, oh well, it's got to be European, and you know, and you know, you can't reject blah blah blah, and you got to have a guy. It's like, understand that we are in a colonized situation. We're in a situation where today many African countries are 45 to 45% Abrahamic, and understand who the Abrahamics were historically, and then just figure that realistically, when we talk about spiritual systems in Africa, if you really go back to it, if you really go back to the ancient record, the prehistorical record, people were worshiping their ancestors. That's what they were doing. They were worshiping their ancestors. Also, and different scientific principles too. You know, so you do have the old dyad very, very anciently. Okay. But again, you know, conflating it with, well, if you don't believe in it, like, no,